I think it would be good, though, if we started having the conversation completely out of order and then editing it into the correct order in post.
I agree. I think, that's how they do it in the movies.
Yeah,
And what are we if not a movie
exactly.
podcast?
Right.
Book. TV show. Podcast. Look, I don't know where I'm going with this.
The conversation completely out of order and then editing it into the correct order in post.
What are we if not a movie podcast? Book podcast. TV show podcast. Podcast. Hello and welcome to Flanagan's Wake, a Doof Media podcast discussing and analyzing the works of Mike Flanagan. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host. And joining me, as always, it's my weird Uncle Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
Pretty good, Scott. We just need a pretext so that if anybody comes up and asks why we're talking, it'll seem natural.
Yeah. It's a sad state of affairs that we need that.
It is.
Just can't have two people talking when one of them is 12.
Yeah. What's the world coming to?
Yeah. This week on the show, we continue with Stephen King's Dr. Sleep as we discuss chapters 7 through 9 of the novel. Abra, now 12, gets a giant dose of responsibility when she finds the baseball boy's picture in a missing children's circular and accidentally invades Rose the Hat's head. Hat. Feeling overwhelmed, Abra brings Dan into things, who reaches out to an old friend himself for some advice. Matt, what'd you think? Chapter 7 through 9. We're really in it now. We're in the novel.
Yeah.
The plot is moving. What'd you think of these chapters?
Some really cool, creepy scenes. A lot of kind of what I see is the table setting part of the novel, where we're laying the groundwork for the stuff that's going to happen later. Sometimes this happens to us where we like the part of the story that we happen to cut out is mostly sort of practical writing, where it's like, well, I have to get these things in position for something that's going to happen later.
Yeah.
And it can feel a bit uninspired at times when you get to that part of the book, but it is necessary. I don't want to sound like the whole week's reading was uninspired. I thought that the interlude where he gets to talk to Hallorann was great. I thought being in Abra's head was particularly good. Like we kind of catch up to Abra again, and she's a preteen, whereas I think the last time we really saw her, she was a little kid, and she
has matured mightily in 2 years.
She has matured mightily, yes, and she just seems like a really interesting character that I'm excited to get to know a bit better.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Abra in this novel, especially so far. I've enjoyed her character a lot so far. Minor quibbles that we talked about last week aside, this is the Abra we're going to be spending the majority of our time with now, that we're introduced to here at the beginning of part 2 of the novel. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. She's great.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting. Like I said, we're in part 2 now, titled Empty Devils, and it's certainly true that I think these 3 chapters are like the setup for the second part. So we've moved into the second part of the novel, and we have to do a little bit of setup in that part, and that's where we spend the majority of our time. But I like it all. Once again, I went into this kind of cautious about how much I was going to enjoy this book or not, and so far, I've been having a good time with it. I'm really enjoying the characters. I of course know where it's going, but I've been enjoying kind of seeing King lay the pieces, some deliberately and some very kind of in the background that you might not even notice, that we'll maybe circle around to once we explore the full novel. But I liked these chapters. I thought the read went very quickly. It was only like 60 something pages. I feel like I did it in an hour and a half. It was very, very quick. So yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into it. Part 2, Chapter 7, titled Have You Seen Me? Our chapter opens in very typical King fashion, Matt, not with any of our main characters, not with Abra or Dan or even with anyone in the True Knot, but instead with Conchetta, Abra's great grandmother. She's fallen down and she can't get up. Remember those? You remember those commercials?
I do. I do. They're forever part of pop culture.
Yep. Yep. Only to, of course, discover when she goes in for broken hip that she has cancer. And this is one of those things that I think is really interesting because, again, this is kind of where King lives so successfully in my head, is when he does these kind of King side moment things. Like Conchetta is not the main character of this book, right? But we continue to have like circled around her, and here we don't just say, "Oh, Conchetta broke her hip, and therefore Abra is going to end up alone at her house while her dad's working on his novel, and is going to have this experience while she's alone because her mom's out taking care of her grandmother." Like, that is basically, for plot purposes, like why all this happens. But instead, we spend the first few pages with Conchetta experiencing this broken hip, experiencing age.
Yeah.
And I love how she talks about, like, instead of just Conchetta broke her hip, it's like Conchetta thinking about the seven ages of man, and how it's kind of a circle where you start off crawling, and here she is at 90 something still crawling.
Yeah. Conchetta has been a big surprise for me going into this book. I wasn't expecting this character, and she's really grown on me. I mean, I think she's one of those King characters you fall in love with immediately. I agree with you. Obviously, we're depicting a woman who is very, very old,
Mm-hmm.
and she's aging and dying ultimately gracefully, and not perfectly, right? There's no such thing as no such thing as dying perfectly, right? I say this to emphasize, like, the book isn't making it seem like, oh, it's easy to die gracefully. It's just showing, like, yeah, it sucks. Actually, it's extremely
Mm-hmm.
hard, but there is a way to go out kind of on your own terms and retain your integrity and your dignity. Um, and contrasting this obviously with the True Knot, and with
Yeah.
some of the specific scenes we get from the True Knot later in the book.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because I think this is ultimately, like, thematically why we're doing this. And you're right, this is a character, I guess spoilers for the movie, this is a character that does not exist in Mike Flanagan's adaptation of the story. One of the characters he cut from that story. I'm sure we'll get into it when we get to that story, why that possibly might have been. But I do think it does make a perfect comparison, especially we see here Conchetta basically says, "I'm 97 years old. I don't want chemo. I don't want to go through treatment. Like, I've lived long enough. Something was going to kill me at this point, and I guess it's cancer." And so she kind of is facing her oncoming death in like you said, like a very, like, it's still sad and it's still part of this cycle, but gracefully, I think
Yeah.
is the best way you can say it. Yeah, I agree with that. And it is perfect to the True Knot, who just kick and scream, sprinting away from death as much as possible.
And we see Abra's reaction to it and how sad she is, and
Yeah.
we empathize with that. And
Yeah.
I think part of the thing you think about is, like, yeah, the idea of death to the young is absolutely terrifying and paralyzing, and might drive you to do something like sacrifice your humanity. But then you see these old people, not just Conchetta, but the people at the hospice as well, as we'll see,
Yeah.
who are all just these exemplars of, like, no, you live your life, you live it the way you know you should live it, and then if you die with a minimum of regrets, then then it's kind of okay.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked many, many times how we're both kind of terrified of death.
Uh-huh.
But I love the idea that fear of death is a young man's game. Is that, like, the idea that the comforting idea that one day I'm going to hopefully reach an age where I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Not that I'm gonna, like, greet it readily, but just that, like, I will have put myself to a level of contentment that um will not terrify me to my very core.
Yeah.
I hope to get there. I don't know if I ever will get there, but I hope to get there. I hope to be able to be like Ketta in this moment at one point, 97 years old, and saying like, that's pretty good. Span did pretty good there. We'll
I,
see.
I f- I feel like from moment to moment, I can even now put myself in a mental state of like, it would basically be fine if I died tomorrow. You know, I've lived a good life, and then like the next breath, I'm like, I never want to die.
Well, I
So
definitely like I've just so much left that I want to see and experience and do that it scares me to my core right now. So yeah,
yeah,
I mean like my kids obviously, but even putting aside that, like so I feel like listeners out there, Matt and I are turning 40 within the next month or two, and so what you're experiencing right now is our midlife crisis in podcast form.
yes,
So apologies for that.
right. It's very appropriate that we be covering a book about the nature of aging and
Yeah,
accepting your uh, oncoming decrepitude.
yeah. It's okay, Matt. We're not even halfway there,
Right, not even
right?
close.
Right?
Not even close to being halfway there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All right, so all of this is set in the backdrop of Abra's school year, and so we get to see kind of what her life is early this fall. She's coming. Her mom is living with her grandmother. She's coming home to her dad, who is taking a sabbatical from his teaching job to write. He's a writer, Matt, and in this year-long sabbatical, he's writing a book comparing the Roaring Twenties to the '60s.
And is he doing this by way of discussing the events happening at a hotel in the Rocky Mountains by any chance? I mean, we're supposed to. This is supposed to remind us of Jack, and by extension, sort of see Abra as being identified with Dan.
Yeah.
Um, which is interesting, right? That's also kind of not something I saw coming. The dad has taken an interesting turn where I kind of have to admit that I was wrong, because the first week or two of our talking about this book, I was like, yeah, we're setting up a conflict between the dad and Conchetta so that there can be some healing later and some character
Hmm.
development. And now I'm kind of recontextualizing those scenes as like, oh, maybe her dad is just an asshole,
Yeah.
and we're meant to think of him as being like Jack Torrance.
It is a really interesting game that I think we're very deliberately playing here, where we are drawing this connection to Jack. There's even a moment in this chapter, I think, where um, Abra is like listening for her dad's typing, and like if he's typing a lot, that means he's having a good day, and that's good, and that kind of calms her down a bit, which is like almost verbatim taken from The Shining, and Wendy kind of gauging how well Jack's writing is going by how much the click clack she hears on the keys. So yeah, I mean this is a very deliberate parallel we're drawing here, and so yeah, I mean the question has to be like, what are we ultimately doing this for? Are we ultimately doing it to make this guy an antagonist? Possibly, maybe, or else just to draw a distinction between Abra's life and Dan's life as children. I think one thing that we haven't really talked about yet is we're drawing so much specific comparison between Abra and Dan and their families and their family situation. It is interesting to me that King elected to age Abra up as much as she did, right? Like you could see a version of the story in which, for the simplicity of the comparison, King made Abra the same age Danny was during the events of The Shining, but he chose not to do that. He wanted her older. He wanted her significantly older. She's basically over double his age,
Mhm.
and that makes the character much more of an active and complex presence in the novel. But I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up because like I can see a version of this book where Abra's 5-6 years old.
Mhm. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I remember us talking during The Shining about the fact that Danny Torrance in The Shining comes off as, wise beyond his years. Um, and maybe King aged her up so that he could sort of be more plausible in that regard.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know. One thing maybe is that like 12 is more maturing into adulthood and the challenges and questions of adulthood. Um,
Yeah, I mean, how many 12-year-old characters have we had? 11, 12-year-old characters have we had in Stephen King stories that we've covered, right? This is an age that King goes back to quite a bit.
yeah,
That we've talked about this many times, the cusp of adulthood, the right before puberty sets in. Like this is a liminal time for a child, and King likes returning to this period a whole lot. And maybe that just fit what he wanted to do with the novel. I mean, it's difficult to conclude on this without the whole scope of the story, certainly. But I just wanted to call it out here because this is the section that really, I think, nails home a lot of the comparisons we're making, especially with this very clear David is Jack stuff.
mm-hmm. Right.
Especially with this part, I like just maybe beat a dead horse, but this part really got to me. Although he was working at home now, David Stone never bothered to walk down the driveway and get the mail. He claimed the U.S. Postal Service was a self-perpetuating bureaucracy that had ceased to have any relevance around the turn of the century. Every now and then a package turned up, sometimes books he'd ordered to help with his work, more often something Lucy had ordered from a catalog. But otherwise, he claimed it was all junkola. I just like junk mail is the majority of the mail we get now. Certainly true. But I think this kind of old man yells at cloud complaining about the postal service,
Yeah.
I think is a very specific thing. Like part of me wonders if this is just King, like a self-insert complaining about the amount of junk mail he gets.
Well, it could
but
be
also
yeah, slightly that, but like also I think it paints a picture of a guy who's not necessarily doing that well.
sure.
Like if I like as someone who mostly works from home, as with your father, sometimes I'll have a period of time where I don't check the mail for a few days, and that usually corresponds to days when I have not left the house very often.
Yeah.
And it's kind of all correlates with like, oh, so this guy can't even be, I mean, literally says can't be bothered to walk down the driveway to get the mail. Like he's just in his house. One imagines him in sweatpants, like he's not doing um Overlook Hotel badly, but he's not doing great either. It seems like he's in a not great part of his life. And I think overall, like there's this kind of interesting tone shift that's happened where I felt like in the previous chapters where we were talking about Abra, it was like this kind of there was this cloud overhanging everything because of her shining and her parents' anxiety about it. But fundamentally, it seemed like, well, she has a happy childhood. She has her conchetta. She has a birthday party. Her parents love her. She's got this doctor who knows that she has the shine. Like it kind of seems like everything is going right for her. And then in this chapter, it really feels like there was a shift where everything is kind of vaguely sucky. Like her life isn't awful, but it's definitely not great anymore. It's just kind of this mundane unglamorousness that kind of pervades this chapter tonally. It's hard to put your finger on exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that is kind of most surprising related to what we talked about last week, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but just the idea that her parents kind of have just stopped talking about her power. We talked last week about how Rose the Hat basically made a bet that said, oh, this little girl, like her parents probably don't even know she has this thing. And if they do, they try to ignore it. And we said, no, that's not true, actually, of Abra's family. Is they're very aware of this thing and they're very consciously talking about it and trying to deal with it. And they even bring in a doctor to analyze her. And it seems like in the years since then, that's all kind of just fallen off. And part of it we see is related to Abra's sense of necessity of kind of hiding and downplaying what she has. And I think that's not a place you want to see her. I think you're also very, very right about David in that, if we continue to make the Jack comparison, Jack was the caretaker of the Overlook Hotel. And when things started really getting bad for Jack, he kind of stopped doing that. Like we talked many times while reading The Shining about, actually, he was doing a very terrible job of caretaking. And it was actually Wendy who was doing like the majority of like the work. And that is David Stone here at home too. Like we get these little snippets of the fact that Abra makes them dinner. Abra does their laundry. She's this 12-year-old girl that is taking care of herself and also kind of her father too.
Mhm.
And yeah, it all is helping paint this picture. And yeah, I'm not saying this guy's going to turn into. I love. He's not doing Overlook bad as yes, that is an order of magnitude worse. But yeah, I agree with you. This kind of just kind of low like beat of unease
Yeah.
that pervades kind of her life, and into it a real problem arises, or is about to, at least.
Yeah, right. I mean, just broadly, he seems like a guy who's kind of given up on himself, and we'll see where where we go with this, like what we do with
Yeah.
this.
And I just want to say, and listeners might not agree with me, I'm a man that loves to read. I enjoy to read and I enjoy to learn, but I cannot imagine reading a book about the comparison between the Go-Go 60s and the Roaring 20s. I just don't think that sounds like a great like marketable topic for a book.
I think it's meant to sound like to kind of make you go like, okay, all
You're gonna
right.
take a year to do that? That's what you're gonna do?
Yeah, you're gonna spend a year of your precious life on God's earth to do that, to create that.
Yeah. Yeah. Not that there's not value in it. I don't want to say that, but maybe maybe something else.
Yeah.
Like I love the idea of like, and hey, if this one goes well, maybe I don't have to teach anymore and become a full-time writer. And I just want to be like, really? You think
Right.
this is the book that's gonna like vault you into full-time writer status? This is the topic?
Yeah. I guess you already literally said this, but the fact that he was a teacher, and that's also what Jack was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they both had delusions that they're gonna stop being teachers and become writers because they're such geniuses. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least Jack was writing like a play, though. I mean, was it a good play? No, I think we made that very clear that it seemed like a kind of a shitty play. But then he abandons his play to write nonfiction, just like this guy is.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Bad call, Ripley.
Bad call, Ripley.
So Abra is, as we say, going through the trash for mail when she finds a missing children's circular. That is where the "Have you seen me" title of the chapter comes from. And she sees in the lower hand corner of that circular Bradley Trevor, the baseball boy that we unfortunately had to witness be horribly tortured and murdered during last week's reading. I love Abra's like real struggle with this. Like for a while, she just trashes it, says the mail is junkola, and tries to like carry on with her life. But this keeps nagging at her. And finally, she like decides, I have this ability, and I have the ability to do something. If not like stop these people, at least give some of the parents and family of these missing people closure. Like I know that Bradley Trevor is dead. I can maybe in some way provide that closure to her family. And I love, we talked just a minute ago about the decision to age Abra up. And this is part of, I think, the benefit of reaping that is this general idea of a kid on the cusp of adulthood, kind of like learning what responsibility is and learning like what it means to feel like the pressure of your own morality pull at you and to act or to do something.
Yes, that's a good point. She's a lot more of an active character. I mean, I don't think this is a criticism of little Danny Torrance as a character, but it's like he was a little 5-year-old boy who was essentially just victimized by this terrible situation. That was what that book was doing. Whereas this book is going to be to some degree driven by Abra's decisions and choices and actions. So makes sense. I agree.
Definitely.
So
what do you think about all this though?
Yeah, the circular. I mean, I love how horrible this made me feel. You know what I mean? Like you grow up and you kind of forget that the very concept of, we put pictures of missing children on stuff just in case somebody has seen them, and maybe the pictures are several years old. This is incredibly dark and depressing if you think about it for 2 seconds. And we probably did all of our thinking about it when we were younger, when we were first exposed to the idea. and now we have installed our mental filters to avoid thinking about the reality of this, and um but then the book here is confronting us with that. It's putting us in the perspective of a 12-year-old who is kind of just at that line. It's not that younger kids than 12 don't have empathy, but I think 12 is a line where you start to have like both like sort of a matured empathy and a complex empathy and a complex imaginative power where you can maybe not just think about the little kids, but maybe think about their parents
Yeah.
and get well and truly depressed by looking at a milk carton or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
And I forgot what that felt like. So this book reminded me that's once again the magic of what King does is he reminds us of these things that we all forgot about our childhood.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and it's a perfect phase where like the the trials and tribulations of the world haven't beaten that out of you a little bit yet. Where it was like, oh, I'm so used to seeing or knowing the idea of faces on cartons, or seeing things like these circulars exist, and just the idea that, oh, everyone kind of assumes these kids are dead by now, but we hope they aren't, or maybe even we know they are, and we're just trying to get some sort of closure on it. Um,
Right.
it's horrible and depressing, and we've kind of filtered that out of our lives now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
And it's connecting for us and kind of humanizing the idea of what the true knot is doing because, you know, I think that's one thing when when you're aware that you're reading horror per se, like you distance yourself from the material. You're like, ah,
yeah,
well, it's monsters, it's vampires,
hmm,
and it's like, well, there are missing children. Like there actually are missing children
yeah,
in the world, and yeah, we're kind of pretending for the sake of this story that some of those children are abducted by these vampire creatures, but that pretending doesn't mitigate the fact that this is just a real thing that happens. Is real people who are monsters kidnap
yeah.
children.
This reminds me. Did you ever see that movie where like this family lost a child, and then he shows up like 20 years later, and then it's not actually him. It's just a guy pretending to be their kid, and he looks nothing like him. But for some strange reason, they just accept him with open arms, and then it turns out the reason they're doing that is because they totally murdered the kid and buried him in their backyard, and so they're just pretending this is their kid to like get rid of any suspicion of that. I can't remember what it's called.
I never saw it, but I remember this from the description as being
Yeah.
like a good idea, right? A good story
God,
idea.
what was that? It's, I mean, it's based on a true story, right? Like I think it was even a documentary film.
Oh
I
wow.
don't
Okay.
remember, but I don't
I
think they
don't.
ever like obviously never like definitively like proved that their kid was buried in their backyard, but like the movie the film strongly pushes you towards that that implication at the end of it. It's
Okay.
fucking crazy.
Yeah.
What a crazy story.
Uh, we'll put it in the show notes.
Classic classic Scott tangent. All right. Let's go to Abra Shining. We learn a little bit more about how Abra Shine works. She's older now. And she can't really she lost like the telekinesis. She can't really lift things with her mind anymore. She can a little bit, but the thing that has not gone away and has possibly even got stronger is some of her other powers. She has the ability to read minds, and she's kind of learned how to turn that ability off, but she can very easily turn it on if she wants to. She can also control people sometimes. Whoa,
Cool.
that's scary.
Yeah.
Glad she's on our side.
Yeah. And she can, except maybe some people who seem to be resistant or immune, which kind of reminds us of. I mean, I just assume that the people who are resistant to her have some of the shine themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I like it's the weak-minded, right? It's
yeah,
just a Jedi mind trick.
just a Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also. I don't know if you read it this way, but I was reminded of Snakebite Andy here. So this is one. This is like kind of a question for you because okay, this is one of those situations where you and I have both seen the movie.
Sure.
So, so the question that I have, I know the answer to, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you think the book is sort of nudging us to compare her with the darkness that we see in the members of the True Knot and consider like she's kind of got similar powers to what these True Knot people can do, and she's kind of in this darker place in her life. It's not that bad, but it could get worse, right? Especially if your dad starts carrying around a roque mallet. So,
Yeah.
like, are you meant to be thinking at this part of the story, like, oh, she could also kind of break bad potentially?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I do think it's interesting that like the encounter with Rose and what Rose decides to do after kind of sort of takes that concept off the board. At least like you could see a version if King was really trying to lean into that, then he would have Rose say like, no, we got to recruit this girl. But it's literally the exact opposite. She says.
Yeah.
Um, but I think at this point in the story, I think you would be not incorrect that the book is gesturing towards that. Because I mean, I like the True Knot are monsters, right? They're the book has really taken the time to draw them as monsters. But I also think, with Andy in particular, it's shown that they're monsters that kind of have a reason for being monstrous. Like what happened to Andy as a child is horrific, and it turned her into this kind of hateful person that hates all men, and she was kind of hoodwinked into becoming this vampire by a very successful, persuasive woman
Mhm.
that played into her hatred, her well-earned hatred. So like I think there is a version of you that you can see exactly why people get looped in with these True Knot people, why people become this, why people make this choice, and why people allow themselves to become monsters that feed off of the pain of children.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess I was just mainly just pinging off the fact that Snakebite Andy is kind of our gentle introduction to the idea of the True Knot in a
Yeah,
sense, and Abra's powers seem to be becoming more like Snakebite Andy's as she gets older.
yeah, I think you're right. The last thing she has is the ability to Farsi, she calls it. Basically, the ability to fix upon an object or a person and mentally go to where they are. That's a pretty cool power.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, pretty useful. Not like not like telekinesis though.
So
I
you're
think it's.
saying you would rather be able to pick shit up
I would.
than
I.
Farsi?
I mean, you and I are literally far seeing right now. Like, it's not that impressive.
I mean,
I'm aware of what's happening in a room hundreds of miles away in Dallas at its exact moment.
yeah, but I have to pick up. Like, what if you could just like do it anytime you felt like it?
Her powers don't even work all the time.
Well, she's
It's
learning, Matt.
not very impressive. I do.
I don't know. I really hate that you just took the concept of like being able to like fucking send your mind thousands of miles away. Just like, well, that's just like the internet. So lame.
No, okay. My more serious thing that I was going to say here is that it's just interesting. I think that King gives the sort of highest level of powers to like young children who aren't going to use them. I'm also thinking of like a character in Insomnia, I,
Hmm. Hmm.
who who has like tons of power, but he's like, yeah, this is too vague. Doesn't matter. I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
it's like the people who get all the power are the ones who aren't really going to use it, and then as they grow up, their power becomes weaker and more inconsistent. I mean, Danny's a good example of this, where Danny was, the guy who almost blew up Hallorann's brains just saying hi to him, and now he sometimes can tell people where their wristwatch is, which is
Yeah. I
again,
mean,
it's cool, but it's not what it was.
yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. There's definitely a softening of these powers. I mean, like, I feel like that's a well worn trope almost. That like, I mean, I think it ties into what we've talked about with King many times. Is like the kind of the magic of childhood
Mhm.
and being a kid, and the idea that the things that you feel and the emotions that you feel and the experiences that you have are just so much more intense and vivid as a child. Um, and that kind of goes away over time. And I think you could say the same thing with the shine. That is, it's a very intense, powerful thing that over time kind of softens. I think Dan is a person who was powerful enough in it that in his middle-aged version, he is still pretty good with it.
Mhm.
But that is not the norm for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right. So I just wanted to, before we move on, a very important note of connection here. We see that as Abra is trying to do her math homework, we see that she's written all the names of her favorite boy band in her notebook. That boy band is titled Round Here, which, Matt, I don't know if you remember this, but this is the boy band in Mr. Mercedes that played at the community center in the exciting climax of that book.
I did not remember that.
Yeah,
So that's great.
it's all connected.
Love it.
So, unable to focus on her homework, Abra touches the picture of Bradley with her left hand. Her left hand is the magical one. Apparently, left hands are always the magical one, Matt, which is why I am so magical.
Me too.
Is it weird that we both wear watches on our dominant hand?
I've started switching it up because it was making me feel asymmetrical.
I just I was always taught to wear the watch on this arm, and I tried doing it on the other one, and it just felt weird to me.
Yeah,
It's
I
like, do you use a mouse with your right hand, right?
I
It's
do.
like, yeah.
Although there was a time when I had it on left hand at work and right hand at home, so that because I heard that it was more ergonomic to switch so that you don't, because like then you end up with one gnarled claw and one normal arm. I heard this was like suggested as a thing you're supposed to do in my many hours of education on ergonomics that I was forced to undergo as a government employee long ago.
Wait, you really had to have education on ergonomics as a government employee?
Yeah, we had all these like you know how you'll have like corporate trainings.
Yeah.
It was that, except way worse and more because obviously, and it
Okay.
was like you'd be quizzed on how to hold your mouse and how to adjust your chair and all that.
Wow.
Because they didn't want to get sued for workplace injuries is the
Sure.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say, I have this like nub on like this thing right here on my wrist, and it only comes out where I exactly the way I would hold my mouse,
Uh-huh.
and like it has to just be of 30 years of holding a mouse like this. But
I'm
it's like I definitely don't have it on the other hand. It's really weird.
gonna suggest that maybe you switch your mouse to left-handed at work.
Okay. Well, okay. Here's the problem is I play video games and my mouse has buttons on the side for the video games I play,
Well,
and it doesn't have them on the side that would be left-handed.
well, not at work you don't.
Well, okay, that's true.
So there you go.
All right, I'm going to try it tomorrow. We'll
Okay.
report back. This is very important.
Yeah.
But I think
Well,
it's too late for the nub. I don't know if this is ever going away.
you're probably right. But here's the PSA for everyone. Just, has it made a difference to me in any detectable way? Of course not. But I was taught it in a piece of educational workplace education.
This is like when my dad had a really big, thick wallet in his back right pocket, and then at some point in his life said, I'm going to switch it over to the left to balance things out.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like what you're doing is actually just doing the thing that broke you on one side and moving it over to the other side to do the same thing.
This was also in the government mandated ergonomics training, by the way. And they recommended that you put your wallet in your front pocket, which I do now.
Yeah. I
So.
mean, also, I don't carry a wallet with near as much shit as my dad's wallet had. I have like 3 credit cards and a little bit of cash and a driver's
Yeah.
license.
It's kind of upsetting to me to now realize how much of my life has been influenced by this government mandated ergonomics training that I took 20 years ago.
Well, don't worry. I'm sure we've closed that department down.
Yeah. You're right.
All right. Anyway, that was all off of left-handed being the magical one, by the way. I just want to bring us back around to it. That was where we got on that tangent.
Excellent.
So she touches the picture of Bradley and ends up finding the place that they killed and buried him. She's able to like rewind it like a tape, which I thought was really interesting. Like she is basically playing through the final moments of Bradley's life. She rewinds it like a tape until she is able to catch the sign on the gate of the factory that they killed him. She jots that down and therefore knows where the location is now. And as she's thinking about who she could possibly tell about all this to help her, quote, the world beyond her window began to turn as if it were mounted on a gigantic disc. And suddenly, Abra finds herself in someone else's head. She's in Rose the Hat's head, actually, as Rose the Hat is, doing what eternal vampires do. Shop at Sam's Club.
Uh-huh.
Are you a Sam's person or a Costco person?
I'm a Costco person.
Yeah, me too.
I have to. It's funny. It didn't even click for me until just now. But like, isn't it interesting how much time we spend with these people when they're doing the most mundane shit? Like,
Yeah.
like what are they doing with their eternity? Shopping at Sam's.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Is it worth it?
Is it worth cutting up a boy so much that he dies slowly over hours and hours and hours to drink his steam in order to get the sweet new deal at Sam's Club?
Yeah. Because we could be showing her doing anything, right? And we choose to dip in on her doing something so grindingly mundane as grocery shopping. It just feels really interesting.
Not just grocery shopping, Matt, but buying 72 ounces of peanut butter.
Yeah,
because we're all definitely going to use that much peanut butter, right?
Yeah, well, you got to eat it by the spoonful, of course.
No, I think you're right. Like she could be at a play. Like you could. I've devoted my eternity to like appreciating art and experiencing, because like I'm saying this because like that's, if I got to live forever, that's probably what I would do, is like you constantly get to see new art and read as much as you can and watch as much as you can and learn as much as you can. But now she's just buying 48 hot dogs.
Yep, she's just a consumer.
Yep. So yeah, she realizes that she's in Rose's head, or she doesn't know who Rose is, but she's in this person's head. But she realizes that someone else has hitched a ride on this tether she's created between them. It's Rose herself that saw this opening and jumped into Abra's head. And as she detects her in there, she psychically pushes her out so hard that she makes a whole fucking earthquake, Matt. She makes a whole big earthquake.
It's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
It is.
I love it.
It is, and it's awesome in all the ways in which like it's incredibly powerful, and then it like as we switch to Rose's perspective in a few minutes, that it just really kind of like scares the shit out of her, because nobody's ever done this to her. I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting to see her lose her composure for once.
Mm-hmm. I also love the detail that her dad manages to remember to hit the save button on his all-important book about the Roaring 20s before he rushes to check if his daughter is okay after a giant earthquake in the middle, the epicenter of which is their house, because it disseminated from Abra.
No, it's a fantastic touch to emphasize how basically disconnected she is from her parents, and how selfish she is and self-absorbed into his, stupid bullshit that he's working on.
Yeah,
it's great.
Would you if you heard your child screaming, would you hit Control S before you rushed?
It depends on the nature of the scream.
Well, here's the trick, David. Autosave.
That's right. Of course, this was
Google Docs a thing in 2013.
I don't know. I feel like yes, but I don't actually know.
Yeah. There's a training video here from 2013 on YouTube that says Google Docs in the classroom.
It definitely existed when we started podcasting, which was almost that long ago. So
don't say that. Stop
it. I know.
I don't like that.
I knew you wouldn't like that.
From here, we cut to Rose the Hat and get to see her side of this whole exchange. We learn that she was forcefully ejected from Abra's head, and forcefully ejected so hard that has sent her comically into a pile of soup. It's like straight out of a cartoon. Just knock into a big wall of soup.
It's pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was something that Rose has never happened to her before. And I love this quote here. A kid with enough in her boiler to set off a blast like that, to not only detect Rose, but send her reeling, wasn't just a steamhead, but the find of a century. She felt like Captain Ahab for the first time, sighting his great white whale, which is a great metaphor, Rose, because as we all know, everything works out great for Captain Ahab.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how prescient this sentence that you've excised is actually, because it's like, yeah, she is going to be her white whale.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
And she
also
just
on
seems like I don't think that's the narrator constructing that metaphor, right? This is
yeah,
we are in a very close third person with
yeah,
Rose the Hat. She is constructing her own Moby Dick
yeah.
metaphor.
Well, not just that, but she says a kid with enough in her boiler to set off a blast like that,
Yeah.
which is making me notice the fact that we're talking about steam, right? So in Rose's mind, this is a metaphor about steam,
Yeah.
but
But of course,
but
yeah.
of course, just to spell it out for those who may have watched The Shining but not read the book, I know we've probably said this before, but that book ends with the boiler exploding because Jack forgot to dump the boiler on the schedule and killing Jack and blowing up the hotel. So
Mhm.
the idea of a boiler being the thing that kills the big bad, it's like, yeah, she's got enough in her boiler to take out any number of True Knot members.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is one of those things where we asked the question in the very first episode, like, why did King return to this property? And I don't think this is the reason, but I do think he had fun writing this novel. And I
Mhm.
think stuff like this is like the type of thing you just kind of guess is like, this is Stephen King having a fun time
Mhm.
constructing imagery like that, as you said, works perfectly for the steam head. In fact, maybe the entire reason King decided to refer to this as steam is to make this boiler metaphor reference to draw this link between these two books. Very possible.
I think that has come to seem very likely to me now that
Yeah.
we have drawn this connection.
Mm-hmm. So Rose calls up Crow Daddy to catch him up on what just happened. She lets him know that this girl is very, very powerful and she wants her, not to turn her, not to make her one of them, not just to eat her, but more to to milk her like a
Mhm.
cow, Matt.
Uh-huh. Yeah, remember when I said last week that King is really good at establishing the stakes, the kind of what, who, when, why of it? Well, now he has taken that firmly placed sense of stakes that he established for us, and then he's amplifying it by saying, "Hey, remember all those details we went over and how you have this really clear sense of the stakes? Well, now I can really easily and casually just turn all that up, crank it
Mm-hmm.
up by adding
Mm-hmm.
this new creative idea that Rose the Hat has introduced that we're going to take all that stuff, but instead of just killing her and torturing her, we're gonna keep her in captivity and keep her alive and torture her
Yeah.
over a long period of time." And um, this also feels like a evolution that has been set up by the story because of this idea that the world is running out of steam, and
Mm-hmm.
in a world where you're running out of steam, you realize like, well, you actually can't just kill these kids anymore because we're gonna get so demonetized for this. Um,
Wait, we monetize?
no, but whatever monetization our channel has is gone. Um, we can't just kill these kids anymore. We're going to have to keep them alive and milk them so that we can get enough steam to continue to survive in the way that we've become accustomed. It's essentially been again set up over the course of this story.
Yeah, I mean, it's just humanity's evolution from a hunter-gatherer species to an agrarian species.
Yeah, yeah,
Only, with child murder.
yeah. It's going to end up like that vampire movie with Ethan Hawke rather.
Which one?
The one where they like keep the humans alive and just like use them as blood bags, basically. I don't. It has Willem Dafoe. I don't remember what it's called. It's a terrible
Okay.
movie. Actually, maybe it's
I've
not a terrible movie. I don't actually
I've
remember.
seen too many vampire movies where they do vampire stories where they do this exact thing. So I don't know. I'm not gonna let us go down any more rabbit holes. Like, folks, here's the deal. At the beginning of this episode, Matt's like, Scott, is this the shortest script we've ever done?
Yeah,
And
no,
I think that got into my fucking head. And
yeah,
now we're just going to go on 7,000 tangents and
no.
make this potentially short episode very long.
I knew this would happen. This always happens. It's
Yeah.
called Daybreakers, by the way.
Oh, I think I have seen that.
Yeah.
It's not important. So she asks Crow to convene the True to discuss her plan of milking people, and then heads back to her family-owned compound that just so happens to be where the Overlook Hotel used to stand. Oh, cool. I mean,
Yeah.
we knew they owned Sidewinder, right? So that wasn't too much of a shock. But the idea that there's like an Overlook campground, essentially, cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's pretty interesting. So this makes it very clear that they're aware of the place. They're probably aware of the power that it had. I wonder if we're meant to assume that they were aware of the power it had when it was around, and maybe even were part of it in some sense.
Yeah, that could be it. Like, when did the True not own Sidewinder? Did they own Sidewinder in the 70s?
Yeah.
Seems like possibly they've been around for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, it feels possible. Feels possible to me.
Yeah.
Just because there's no better place to say this, you just said the name Crow Daddy. I just don't think we ever specifically called out the fact that all the True Knot members have like titles instead of names.
Yeah.
They're like Crow Daddy, Grandpa Flick, Rose the Hat. It's like by throwing away their humanity, they've sort of become a caricature of themselves.
I like that. I was about to ask you why you think that is. So thanks for predicting. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And I also just Crow. I keep thinking of Black House for some reason, thinking about the Crow and Black House and Crow Daddy, the Crow being basically a child snatcher. That association jumped out to me anyway.
You have now become better at making these connections than I am. So I appreciate this. I didn't think about that at all, but I like that.
I got my diploma, my constant reader diploma.
So Abra's neighbors throw an earthquake party, as you do. Have you known people that will like literally any excuse for a party, they're just going to do it? This is something we did in college for sure. Like, I remember there being a hurricane that was supposed to hit College Station very bad, and a lot of people were leaving town, and then a bunch of other people were like, hey, isn't a hurricane the name of a drink? Let's do that.
Oh God, that's amazing. I love it.
So they throw an earthquake party despite the fact that, it seems like the earthquake weirdly only affected just their street and like one street over and nowhere else in the neighborhood. That's weird. Weird.
Yeah, I think if I were in that position, I would be like, clearly this wasn't an earthquake. Clearly, like a gas pipe underground has ruptured, and we have to address this situation now, and this is not a joke. But no,
yeah,
it's.
But you're like really into rocks though, so
yeah, I guess
these things.
Yeah, I guess I guess most people would probably just be like, "Yeah, it was an earthquake localized entirely to my kitchen."
Yeah. I think it's. I don't know. Like, no one's gonna. I think you're right that the most plausible explanation would be just something infrastructure wise, but yeah, I don't hold it against people for just being like, oh, that was weird. Guess we have earthquakes now.
Yeah, who knows?
I really love this beat, Matt, that David doesn't really notice his daughter is acting slightly different at the party. It's just like, I think it goes in line with everything we've talked about so far. And I love like the detail of like, this girl has reached a certain age where you have to be paying attention and making sure that she's eating, because this is the age where some women get eating disorders because they start caring about overly caring about their looks and their health and inundated with images and stuff and develop these eating disorders. So he's like observing that she's eating food, but his observation of her behavior basically ends there, and he doesn't notice that she's not really behaving like herself, that she's preoccupied with something. He doesn't really notice any of that. And the idea that if her mom were home, she might have noticed this stuff.
That is really interesting because it's not painting a picture of like he's completely negligent and he doesn't care about her at all. it's just like he doesn't have a connection with her.
Yeah.
He's parenting. He's putting effort into parenting, but the effort is going into making sure that the check boxes on the parenting checklist are filled out.
Yeah.
And he has filled out the yes, she is eating food checkbox, and so he's like, well, everything seems to be in order, but he just has no sense of her as a human being.
Yeah. Yeah. So Abra leaves the party early, heads back home to do her homework, and I love this moment where she looks up and sees Rose the Hat in her window. Oh, I love the writing here. She put her school books in her backpack, then looked up, and the woman from the supermarket was staring in at her from the window. That was impossible because the window was on the second floor. But she was there. Her skin was unblemished and purest white, her cheekbones high, her dark eyes wide set and slightly tilted at the corners. Abra thought she might be the most beautiful woman she had ever seen. Also, she realized at once, and without a shadow of a doubt, she was insane. Masses of black hair framed her perfect and somehow arrogant face and streamed down over her shoulders. Staying in place on this wealth of hair, in spite of the crazy angle at which it was cocked, was a jaunty top hat of scuffed velvet. So I love this. We've had many, many, many descriptions of Rose the Hat and her kind of entrancing, unbelievable, otherworldly beauty. And you made the Snakebite Andy reference a little bit ago. They both see Rose the Hat as incredibly intensely beautiful, but Abra clocks her insanity in almost the same breath as she clocks her beauty, which I think is important.
Yeah, me too. It's great.
And this isn't, just to make it clear, like, this isn't any kind of like astral projection of any kind. This is not Rose is here now observing her again. This is just kind of having a vision, right? She is channeling what Rose looked like, thanks to what Bradley saw in her, with what the baseball boy saw right before he died.
Yeah, that's important to clarify because Rose hasn't quite exactly found her yet.
Yep. We do get this one beat of that she has this single gross tooth in her mouth, which we haven't seen that before.
Yeah, that's interesting because for some reason that evokes more like witch rather than vampire.
Sure.
Which I never thought I had vampire so firmly in my head that I didn't have room for anything else. But the idea of a witch, first of all, wearing like a weird hat, that's kind of a witch thing, and having a weird snaggle tooth, that's kind of a witch thing, and also the Hansel and Gretel kind of catching children and eating them up. That's a witch thing. So fits just as well.
In the seminal classic Hocus Pocus, they also kind of suck the youth out of children.
Oh yeah.
In like a steamy, smoky thing.
Well, holy shit. She's a witch.
Yeah, I mean, yes, she's a vampire witch, right?
Yeah. I guess I never thought about the fact that those two concepts blend together at the edges more than I realized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our chapter ends here with Abra, terrified, finally thinks of who she needs to talk to about all this. Of course, she should have thought of it the whole time. Tony's father, and so she sends a blast out to Dan Torrance, and that is the close of our chapter.
Yep.
And we pick up right away with chapter 8, Abra's theory of relativity, where Dan is he's driving the teeny town train, something he really likes to do. I love that the book gestures towards Danny's robbed childhood a little bit. We've talked about this already, but once again, we're gesturing towards it, that like Danny kind of did lose kind of some of the simple pleasures of childhood very, very early. And now he's a middle-aged man that really, really loves driving around on a train. To be fair, trains are cool.
Trains are cool. I think any man of any age would enjoy driving around any size of train, including a child-sized train.
Yeah, true.
So, no issues at all there. Yeah, I mean, I think we're toying with this idea that Dan has some level of arrested development too, where yes, he wants to play with the train. We emphasized, I think, last week that he, sort of dates sporadically, but he doesn't have a girlfriend or anything like a girlfriend, and I think part of that is just like the exigencies of the plot is like Dan can't have a long-term relationship while also doing all the crazy shit that is required of him by the plot. But also I think it's meant to be an indicator of like, is this a guy who hasn't, progressed I don't want to come down too hard. I mean, sometimes you just don't want to date, but I feel like that's what we're saying with this character, though.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. Dan finishes up and agrees to go get coffee with Billy when Abra's message asking for help hits him like a shotgun. This makes him think of good old Dick Hallorann and when he sent a similar message of help out to Dick. And it makes him think of the fact that Dick came. He all the way from Miami. He promised he was going to help, and he did it. And I love that Dan is here presented with a similar choice. The idea that this girl has now reached out to him for help, and does he have a duty to do it? And once again, the words of AA and his sponsor kind of guide him through this idea. I really love this exchange right here. You like the life you're living, Danny boy? It wasn't the first time he had been asked this question, and it wouldn't be the last. Yes, no hesitation on that score. Maybe he wasn't the president of General Motors or doing nude love scenes with Kate Winslet, but in Dan's mind, he had it all. Think you earned it? No, Dan said, smiling. Not really. Can't earn this. So what was it that got you back to a place where you like getting up in the morning? Was it luck or grace? He'd believed that Casey wanted him to say it was grace, but during the sober years, he had learned that sometimes the sometimes uncomfortable habit of honesty. I don't know. That's okay, because when your back's against the wall, there's no difference. So lots of stuff to talk about here. I love the idea of luck or grace, and does it ultimately matter? Like, I think grace is like one of my favorite concepts just in general. The idea of like, because it's completely unearned. It's just a thing that you have or you don't, whether you believe in a higher power or just the grace brought to you by the people in your lives. It's this wonderfully powerful concept that I know we've talked about on the show many times, but I really love the idea of grace, and the idea of like, what is it that gets you through the toughest parts in your life, and if it's just a person deciding to have grace with you.
It's good to remind ourselves of the value of that. I think really, the only difference between the concept of word and grace, of luck and grace, is like, is there an agent behind this action? Because if it's luck, then it's just, a chaotic universe and the dice came up your way for no reason. But if it's grace, it means, like you just said, either a person or a higher power decided to extend to you this chance, regardless of whether you deserve it. And so, it has a different kind of moral valence to it, even though, again, like the character says here, from your point of view as the person receiving it, you're just like, oh, thank God. Either way, I don't care where this came from. Thank God.
Yeah. The other really important thing I wanted to talk about this quote was Kate Winslet.
Well, Dan's a man of a certain age, so we can assume that he saw Titanic at a very formative period of time.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of a core memory for him.
Yeah, please don't misunderstand me. I think Kate Winslet is a gorgeous woman, and I also watched Titanic at a formative age. But it's 2013 in the scope of the story. Do you think Dan saw The Reader, in which Kate Winslet plays a Nazi? Because I think that's like the last Kate Winslet doing nude scenes before this book came out.
Maybe.
Nazi Kate Winslet.
Gotta admit, I really jumped to Titanic there and didn't think too hard about it. But
I mean, certainly, yes. Like that is one of the most well-known performances. I mean, first of all, like Kate Winslet, like in her career, has done a lot of get naked and have sex with people scenes in movies.
Okay.
Not that I know that. But I think she's just done a fair amount of time. But I'm pretty sure like the most recent one to the date of this book was the one in which she plays a Nazi woman having sex with a 15-year-old boy.
Oh.
So,
okay.
Cool.
All right. Well, maybe that's what Dan was thinking about for some reason.
I mean, he was thinking about Titanic. It made me laugh because I'm just imagining him walking home from The Reader being like, that's the life right there.
Yeah. Right. That's where I wish I was. Yeah. Yeah.
With this in mind, Danny decides that he's going to respond to Abra and help her out. He gets her email address and arranges to meet up with her. And we joked about this in the introduction, Matt. There are a lot of words spent here in this chapter talking about how careful they have to be to deal with the fact that this is a 40-year-old man, 40-something-year-old man, meeting with a 12-year-old girl. That unfortunately in the world we live in, they have to be very careful with the perception of that idea. And I think it's sad, but I think just generally true, right?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think if you even saw an interaction like this happening in public, it might catch your attention due to its weirdness. Like,
Yeah.
you would either assume that he was your father, or you would kind of be keeping your eye on it out of the corner of your eye.
Yeah. It's so sad, but like I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
So their cover story is that Dan is her uncle, Uncle Dan. And that is actually, we learn Abra's theory of relativity is that, well, maybe he is Uncle Dan, because maybe, we're all kind of related in some small way. I think the comparison she makes is that dogs and humans, like, chromosomally are like very, very, very close. It's a fun joke that she has, but I also like the idea of the fact that they both have the shine, and the fact that they have this power makes them in a sense family in a way that blood different but could not.
Yeah, right. I like the idea of bringing family into this, where the True Knot think of themselves as a family, even though they're, I don't know. It's interesting. I was gonna say, even though they're like clearly not, and that it's all transactional and yada yada yada, but like the True Knot actually do have. Huh, I didn't expect this tangent. This is kind of a tangent that bubbled up for me just now, but like,
Okay.
we could depict the True Knot as basically being a bunch of backbiting schemers who are always trying to, the True Knot could very well be the kind of people who are like, well, if there's one less True Knot member, then there's more steam for me. But we never really see them do that.
Yeah.
They actually seem to kind of get along and just enjoy their semi-bohemian existence together, and they all have sex with each other and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are genuinely sad when people cycle out, and I mean, you're absolutely right that Rose in the scenes we've seen has a very limited amount of steam, and she's not hoarding it for herself. She's keeping it and rationing it for the sake of the family. So it is a kind of warped family, but I think it is still like I agree with you. I feel like they are upset when their family members die, and it is not just because it reminds them of their own mortality. I think it's just like they, in their own fucked up way, genuinely care for these people.
So yeah, that I agree with that, and I guess So they are a family, although I admit you're right, they are a twisted kind of family. And then here we have another sort of found family with Dan and Abra.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do love this whole conversation, though. I really love the early parts of the conversation when they're still kind of trying to feel each other out, and they're just enjoying this world in which not only do they get to talk to each other with just their thoughts, but they get to talk to someone who understands what life is like for them. And for Abra, that's an entirely new experience. And for Dan, it's an experience that he's had very few times in his life. I also really just like conceptually the idea of them sending each other pictures that they're not really mentally communicating in words per se, but they're just able to communicate via cartoons or pictures that they've created. It's just kind of a logical extension of like, if you're able to convey things via thoughts, like words become limiting at some point, and you don't necessarily need to do that.
Yeah, it's positively delightful. Like they're sort of riffing on each other's imaginations in this like shared imagination space. It's actually a concept where you're like, oh, I want to see that kind of explored more. But it's like, well, that's not what this book is about, but it's a fun idea.
Sure. Yeah. And I love the quote here. For the first time in her life, Abra felt unconditional pleasure, joy even, in the talent that had always puzzled and sometimes terrified her. Thanks to this man, she even had a name for it, the Shining. It was a good name, a comforting name, because she had always thought of it as a dark thing. I love this as an extension of what you and I talked about the last couple of episodes. In this idea of, I think you even mentioned it in the first episode that in King novels, this power that these people have is almost always a burden, a curse, something that complicates their lives, that ends up hurting them, and that they have to overcome. It really does seem like in this book in particular, though, we are trying to reframe this thing as, yes, there are bad sides of it. She is now got herself in the crosshairs of Rose the Hat, and these are bad people that do bad things with this power, but that there are good sides of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
That there are good uses of it as well. There are things that a person can do, and a ways in which it makes them feel special. I love kind of King's desire to, I don't know, clarify this is the right word, but like, I think he's evolved over time in his view on these type of abilities and how he depicts them in his books.
Yeah, I feel like it's just more complicated and admits it because it's a metaphor for so many different things now. You know,
Yeah.
it's he's used the magic and the shining and the touch as metaphors for, like, maybe in some books it focuses more on, like, yeah, it's a metaphor for like your artistic talent, but then sometimes maybe it's like, it's a metaphor for your empathy, and all these different metaphors get mixed together. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
there's a sunny side to it and there's a dark side to it. I like it.
Yeah. I do too. I love the idea of liking the name of The Shining because she thought it was a dark thing, but
Mhm.
no, it's like, it is interesting. Like, that was always the frame, right? Is that this is that, Danny, you shined bright and
Mhm.
powerful, but in the world of that book, in the world of The Shining, like, he was surrounded by so much darkness and so much evil, and it all wanted him because of this thing. Like, it kind of, the light got buried a little bit, and
Mhm.
um,
Yep.
seeing opportunities to reverse that here.
Love it.
Um, we mentioned this again, but I just want to hit the beat here that Abra's parents have kind of fallen into what I describe as like a don't ask, don't tell policy with her power. They know she has it still because things happen every once in a while. Like, she's away at camp and calls up the second that Ketta learns she has cancer because she's learned this information through her power. Um, but mostly they don't talk about it,
Mhm.
and Abra doesn't mention it, and we've just settled into this kind of awkward uh balance with it. I think it also even says, to carry on our just ripping poor David apart, like, her mom is more aware of it than David is.
Mhm.
Her mom is more observant of the fact that she has it and does things than her husband is.
Yeah. Um, keep pounding on David. I do wonder where we're going with this. You know, I don't actually know.
I mean, it could be nowhere, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I do we think that this, like, upend what we said last week? I mentioned it earlier, the idea that Rose was just wrong in her read of what Abra's family was going to do around her power, and therefore how vulnerable she is, um, without the support system of her family.
Well, she clearly doesn't feel like she can just go talk to them about this stuff.
Yeah. I mean,
So
we end this week's reading with "Don't tell my parents," right?
yeah, yeah, and she's going out of her way to contact Dan in a way that they don't know about. So
Mm-hmm. But he is her family, right? So maybe. One thing that we know that Rose does not know about is Dan Torrance, for sure.
yes.
So the conversation eventually does move on to Rose and the problem of the True Knot, as well as Bradley Trevor. The good news is that they kind of reason that Rose never got a good look at Abra. She sent her a strong message of mirror. The idea is that if she saw Abra, she would be able to go back there at any time she want and know exactly where she is. But she didn't get that. And so we're safe. Unfortunately, the bad news is they are underestimating what she did get a good look at, and also, of course, the power of Google.
Yeah.
Very powerful, that Google.
Like I was telling you before, the power of the internet is nothing compared to the power of. Wait, no, I got it backwards.
No, switch that, reverse it.
Reverse it. Yeah.
But they do reason one thing, though, Matt. They're vampires that eat the shine, and that Abra is in danger. Dan asks her to build a burglar alarm in her head, which I guess is the thing you can do. That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool that they have burglar alarms and they have boxes that they can shut things up in. Now, I would at least try imagining like a gun in my head
A
that
head
I could
gun.
use to shoot in intruders, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a very American response to the problem, Matt, I have to say.
If I ever have one question to ask Stephen King, it would be why didn't you tell Abra to imagine a gun?
But make sure you imagine a gun safe for the gun, because we need to be careful in
Yes,
the brain.
obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Matt, I want to talk to you about this a little bit too. So the text here says he knew what she was going to say next before she said it, and there was no mind reading involved. She was only a child after all. This time when she took his hand, he didn't pull away. Promise you won't let her get me, Dan. Promise. He did, because she was a kid and needed comforting. But of course, there was only one way to keep such a promise, and that was to make the threat go away. Oh shit, Dan, what are you getting yourself into here?
What a badass.
Yeah. We haven't talked, obviously, like the book draws the clear comparison of like he has this debt to pay. Dick is going to hit this drum again for us here in a couple chapters that he has this debt to pay because Dick helped him when he needed help. But of course, the other beat that is kind of tangentially mentioned here when Abra briefly searches into his mind and finds Deanie, and he immediately shuts that door. The idea that like that's a kid he chose not to help, right? It's a kid standing in front of him that he chose not to help, and that is his lowest point, and that is his greatest failure, and he has to make up for it.
Yes. I think we're all invested in this, and it's communicated to us. So
Yeah. But it's not until Dan is on his way back to Frasier that he remembers his vision of the hat that one day and of Deanie's warning in his dream. I want to talk about this a little bit because this is an interesting thing King does sometimes with his structure, that like the idea that Dan got a warning about Rose multiple times before he even knew who Rose was, right? The idea that he saw this vision of a hat, didn't really know what to do with it, but it felt creepy and bad and weird. And then in his dream, Deanie came to him with this prophetic dream about, you don't want to mess with this woman. She's the queen bitch of blah, 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 and she'll eat you alive. It's an interesting choice because like functionally we already knew that Rose was bad, and by the time Dan remembers the warning, he's already known that Rose is bad news, right? So like I'm not even saying this is like bad writing or bad structure. It's just like it's a thing King does many times. And in this particular instance, it's like there's no dramatic irony here. There's nothing lost in like plot advantage. It's not like there's a moment of like, oh, there's this woman standing in front of you that has like a funny hat, and Dan can't remember the warning he got from Deanie about the bad hat lady. And if only he could remember it, he would get out of this trap before it's too late. We're not doing any of that. It's just like, here's some vague shining warnings about a woman that you are introduced to actually knowing she's bad, right? I don't even know what I'm what I'm ultimately trying to say here. I just like I was trying to wrap my head around what we were doing with this sorts of things.
yeah, I guess I'd go even a step farther and say I don't particularly like this thing that you're describing, because I just agree where it's like it just feels very structurally necessary. While let me phrase that in a better way. Like it feels like the kind of thing that he went back in and wrote in later, because he realized like it's this we're taking like 100 pages to get to the plot, so I need to
200.
I need to
Yeah.
dribble some foreshadowing throughout the early part of the book to make it feel like, but little did Dan know there was darkness lying ahead in his future. Are we going to talk about that right now? No, but that's okay, because it's ominous and it's vibes, and it's I suppose you could call it foreshadowing,
Yeah.
but I don't. I agree with you that it's not like narratively functional foreshadowing. It's just kind of there to create atmosphere. And while I guess there's nothing wrong with creating atmosphere, I do agree that it just feels kind of like, okay, so what?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the choice to, I guess there are two separate complaints here. The first is that the establishing of these moments with the hat and with Deanie, and then the callback to these moments as if it's supposed to be some great like revelation of like he's driving home from Frasier and he's like, oh, there's something about this hat lady that I remembered. Oh yeah, it was that the ghost of Deanie told me she was bad. Okay,
Yeah,
well, I guess now I'm gonna carry on knowing that she's bad. Like I guess like I don't think you can say that the reason why he says I gotta talk to Dick about this thing is because of he remembered Deanie's dream. Or maybe it is. Maybe like that is the point that we're missing is like that King brought back this dream so that Dan would fully comprehend the seriousness of this, and that motivates him to say, I gotta get Dick on the phone or the corpse phone.
yeah,
Um to get some answers to some of this stuff.
yeah. Maybe so. If so, I don't know if I like feel it. Like, yeah, I can kind
Yeah.
of. I see
Yeah.
the argument you're making. I just don't. Yeah, just not. It's not my favorite. Not my favorite storytelling technique.
I think you're just right though that what it actually functionally was like we're on page like 200 and something and we're still table setting and so yeah we have to dribble and drop like these storylines are going to intersect eventually, don't worry, like, and I'll show you that by having Dan see a spooky hat floating through the streets.
Right.
um and yeah, ooh, yeah,
Yeah.
that is the function of it, but to bring it back in this kind of way I was like okay, but to service what? Like he didn't
Yeah.
learn anything new about Rose. He knew she was dangerous. He knew she was bad. Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Sometimes, yeah. I was just gonna say, like, sometimes you feel like, well, maybe if the character was like not denying their shining, then they would have actually capitalized on that awareness.
Yeah,
But because they're pushing away that part of themselves instead of acting as a warning, it just falls on deaf ears, and then you can be like, ah, shoot, missed opportunity. But I don't know if I perceived it that way at the time, and I don't know if anybody did. So
yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
So while kind of considering what to do when he gets back home, Dan seeks out information on Dick Hallorann for some answers. I think this circles around to a conversation we had last week. I think we just kind of assumed Dick must have died, and that's why Dan lost like the mentor and support system he had in Dick Hallorann. But we learn here actually that Dick didn't die, at least not when Dan was a kid that he was aware of. That it's just like around when he was a teenager, and started drinking, he just kind of lost contact with him and then never connected with him again. And that was it. It's kind of it's kind of sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sad. It's sadder than if Dick had died when Danny was young, because it's just like, oh, life just kind of meandered away, and he kind of forgot
Yeah,
about this old guy who had really meant so much to him
yeah,
in the past. And I think it's kind of fitting in the story about growing old and the inevitability of death, and kind of this undercurrent of like disappointment and life not going the way you maybe wanted it to. It fit to me somehow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree with that. It just and it like we don't know how this relationship between Dan and Abra is ultimately going to end, right? And but like it seems like from Dick's perspective, the point of his mentorship with Danny was to come in at the moment he needs him, whether by luck or by grace, um, train him, and then send him on his way. Like he's like Dick was a very important figure in Danny's life, but they didn't really have a relationship. Like we talked about family, right? We talked about the idea of perhaps Dan can be Abra's found family in a way. It didn't seem like Dick served that really. He just came a couple times, and that was it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a stretch to even call him a mentor. Like, they had 2 conversations where Hallorann gave him a couple tips,
Yeah.
which maybe was all he had to offer in the way of mastering The Shining, but
Yeah.
it still feels sad though.
Yeah, I agree. The chapter ends with Abra sending a picture of a baseball mitt to Danny. It's Bradley's mitt. Abra, we didn't talk about this, but during the conversation, she kind of reasoned that if she had the mitt, she would be able to locate anyone who touched it. And we know that Barry, okay, I'm not going to say that word, but it's a derogatory term.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna say it, but Barry the C said it, touched the glove, and so if she had the glove, she could locate him and then know where the True Knot are.
Yeah. 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 The that's one of the many True Knot names where you're like, okay, all right, but yeah,
Hey Steve, why we do that one?
because he goes out of his way earlier to say he was just a white guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Why is he called that?
Yeah.
Is it not meant to be the slur? Is it meant like who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it does for us, aside from giving this sense of them being kind of otherworldly or larger than life, is it gives this sense of like these people, like they've lived so long that they just have like stories. And that name harkens back to something that happened in 1910. And it was so funny. Ha ha ha. All the True Knot members laughed about it. And then that became his name forever. And that's kind of the vibe you get with all these names is like something happened to them in the distant past. And now it's been so long that that's just like their identity, actually.
Yeah. I agree. Just a choice by Mr. King.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, let's move on to our final chapter of the week. Chapter 9, The Voices of Our Dead Friends. Our final chapter of the week this is a short one, right? I think the other 2 chapters were long. This is only like 10 pages. As Dan goes into the room of Eleanor Ule to once again perform his doctored sleepy duties. Eleanor is there kind of waiting for him and tells Dan that Azrael belongs to him, not the house. And then she starts to get a little weird. She says that she's had many visitors tonight, the dead walking by her in an endless parade. She references the Greek poet George Sepphoris, who King has, I'm pretty sure, quoted in several other novels that we've covered. I don't remember exactly which ones, but I remember this Greek poet as being one that King returns to. This time the quote is, "Are these the voices of our dead friends or just the gramophone?" It's a 1-line poem. I kind of love it, actually.
Yeah. Is that the whole poem? I didn't realize that.
I don't know
actually.
if I don't know.
Okay.
I tried to look it up and while Google can tell you how many of a certain type of convenience store and give you mountain views of exactly which mountain views. It cannot tell me whether this is part of a longer poem or just a short little snippet.
Well, maybe if we had The Shining, we would know.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I love it. I love it when we throw in these poems about death. I feel like King went on a kick of reading like every poem about death because he sure knows a lot of them.
Yeah. I love like that. Are these the voices of our dead friends or just the gramophone? Because like, it's interesting the idea of recorded songs that like you can listen to things from people that are dead, right? We were talking in our bonus show too, a From podcast, when the characters were going through a barn filled with the clothes that belonged to all the people in the town that had died, and how like macabre and messed up that is, that they're just like in a room of dead people's clothes. And then one of the other characters claims it was like, well, that's just kind of like a flea market, right? It's just like this parade of clothes by probably not all dead people, but probably like a lot of dead people. And just the idea that the voices that we can hear coming from recordings, like could be dead people too, are dead people in a lot of instances.
Yeah.
Every time you listen to old music, Not even that old anymore. Well, okay, old relatively, but not for us because we're doing great. We're doing great. We're not even middle aged yet.
Not even
But
close.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Music is spooky.
That is, I think that's what George was getting at in this poem, is that music is spooky.
Yep.
I mean, am I just like misreading the poem entirely? Like, what do you think it actually means?
You know, I mean, that's certainly a reading that is compelling. I think, you know, a good poem can support many readings. So another possibility is for me, the art of interpreting poetry, the way I go about it is I just think like, well, what does this cause me to experience or imagine?
Mm-hmm.
What picture does this create in my head? And the picture it creates in my head is like you're in, you know, your sitting room, which you have a sitting room, I assume.
I have a sitting room. All
Everyone
right.
has a sitting room.
I'm doing great.
And you hear from the next room, from the conservatory.
Oh, no.
You hear drifting through the wall, some sounds drifting through the wall, and some, you know, could be mumbling and muttering, could be music. It's hard to tell. Could just be the gramophone playing on its own in your house, but it could be the voices of your dead friends talking amongst themselves
Oh, no.
in the next room,
In my conservatory.
in your conservatory. And then
Isn't a conservatory just a greenhouse?
I don't know. What's a conservatory?
I don't know. I thought you knew. That's why I was going to ask.
No, I was reaching for those words that people use to describe things in the Victorian era, where
Of course,
clearly they had rooms that they used for things. Yeah, I think it's basically a greenhouse.
To conserve.
Yeah, I don't know why they called it a conservatory. Maybe to keep stuff alive in the winter?
Sure, yeah. That's actually probably just it. But it also has the voices of my dead friends in it. Or a gramophone.
Or a gramophone.
No, I mean, I think you're right. Like, I like my interpretation, but I also like just the idea of like the spooky nature of what are these voices? Who are these? Like that experience is great.
Yeah, well, the thing I just said is much more of a sort of horror short story, whereas yours is more of a like, this is a sort of meaningful statement about, you know, life. So two different genres.
But both great. That's why poetry is good.
Yeah,
I'm really coming around on poetry as I age.
yeah, me too.
I think it's remarkable.
I read my son a bunch of poems that I like the other day, and then we discussed them, and it was a peak parenting experience.
Wow, I'm jealous.
Yeah,
I want to do that.
well, you'll get there.
I'm gonna sit my 4-year-old down and say, "All right, are these the voices of our dead friends, or just the gramophone?" And I'm gonna just see
how he
what does that
reacts.
make you? What does it make you feel?
Yeah. Is that anything?
Mrs. Oulet gives him one final cryptic message, telling him to wait, telling him the lights will announce an arrival and a door will open. Then his visitor will come, and then she just very quickly dies. But there's no red mist. There's no death. She just stops.
Yeah.
And then Dan kind of listens and waits, and the lights flicker, the doors open, and Mrs. Oulet's mouth opens, and out of her throat comes Dick Hallorann saying, "Danny." Wow.
Yeah. It's creepy stuff. I love it. It's powerful. It's interesting. It's kind of, I mean, it's sort of obviously macabre, but it's also just like gets more macabre the more you think about it, because it's like the fact that she dies, but then doesn't like immediately, like the red mist doesn't come out immediately. It's like the door has been wedged open, and Dick is taking this as an opportunity to kind of squeak through, kind of skirt the rules.
And I love, it's very macabre, but I love kind of the mysticism of it, because like there's no answers to how this is happening or why this is happening or why Mrs. Eleanor Oulet is a conduit for this, and like just has this knowledge even before her death. Like, there's no
Mhm.
explanation for this, and good. There shouldn't be. It's just creepy and unsettling, and it works. It's almost as if, I think you said, like a wedge in a door, or as you walk to, I think it was the border that King's Text described it as last week. As people approach that border, that finish line, they are connected to something greater than themselves,
Yeah.
and in this instance, that connection is being used.
I will say that my insomnia uh, meter was absolutely pegged out this entire section, and to a large degree during this whole week's reading. But this in particular, I was like, if you've read that book, you know exactly what I'm picturing is happening,
Yeah.
metaphysically.
Hmm. I do. I do.
um, but and if you haven't, then it also works totally fine. But it's just fun because I have this feeling that King, ever since King kind of constructed this metaphysics in Insomnia, he has like consistently carried it forward as far as I can tell. So um,
Sure.
that's a surprisingly influential book in my interpretation of later King works, because and it's because he's unusually explicit about the metaphysics. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
he's just showing it to you in a way where here it's very vague, and Dan can't really see, Kit doesn't really understand what's happening, but um, which works really well as like otherworldly, mysticism, like you said. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. But before we get to continue on with that emotional beat, we cut away and do something entirely different for a few pages. I'll just say this right now. I don't like this choice to intersect the scene with this true not scene. It's not that I dislike the true not scene. I just don't think it's necessary to kind of cut out of the emotional beat of, oh my god, Dick Hallorann is now back and speaking through the mouth of a dead woman, and we're about to have this interaction. I just don't think like it lines up like emotionally and tonally that you cut away from that in that moment. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't like it at all. um, yeah, it's funny. I think we're kind of on the same page with a couple of these things this week's reading, where it felt, again, I kind of like the last complaint we had. It felt very uh like the narrative requires that we have this scene somewhere, so we're just going to put it here, because if it were earlier than this, it would break something, and if it were later than this, it would be too late. So we put it right here, and it's just like, God, this doesn't feel like a good place to put this at all. Um, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't even know if I agree with like if we put it earlier than this, it ruins it. Like you could almost just have this scene as the opening of the chapter,
Uh-huh.
and from there cut to Dan going to Miss Ule's room, and then just do that all real time without getting away from it. And I
Yeah,
don't know what you lose there.
that's true, because we escalate the stakes by showing, or the not necessarily the stakes, the urgency, by showing, hey, they kind of know where she is, and
Yeah.
then you have Dan having the call to adventure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Um yeah, but that aside, I do actually like this scene, and I wanted to focus on a little bit. So they're hanging out at the Bluebell campground inside, they're actually right now inside the Overlook Lodge, which is like, I guess, a lodge that has been built on the corpse of the Overlook Hotel. But this campground and this lodge has been closed for quite a while now. Just a true knot that uses it. And I wanted to focus. So we talked a little bit about the True Knot and their names. We haven't really focused on the personalities of the people outside of Rose and maybe Crow Daddy, but I wanted to highlight one that is kind of front and center for us here in this meeting between all like the, I guess, the leadership, the senior members of the True Knot, and that is our boy Grandpa Flick, who is, I believe we're told, like the oldest of them.
mhm.
And my man is, he's gross. He's really gross, Matt. He's really disgusting.
Uh-huh.
He's really, really gross.
Yes. I think this is meant to directly contrast with like the people in the hostel, and Conchetta, for that matter, who are,
Mm-hmm.
coping much better with the indignities of age and dying. And here, this guy who's been, old for like 100 years, and he's just not doing it gracefully at all, and
Yeah.
clearly just resents the fact of it, and there's no there's no grace at all.
Yeah. No, I think you're right there. I hadn't thought of it that way, but the second you like teed that up for me earlier in the episode, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. That's
Mhm.
exactly it.
Yeah.
I like that. So we learn that it's actually been a pretty good year for Steam for the True Knot on account of, all the bad shit.
Mhm.
The movie theater thing, which I believe was just the shooting in Aurora, Colorado,
Mhm.
happened, I believe, in 2012 or 2013. The church fire in Little Rock, which I believe also was a real thing that happened. The terrorist thing in Austin. That was the only one I couldn't remember what the terrorist thing in Austin was.
I mean, they're not talking about no, that's the
The
wrong.
shooting? No, that was
That was
well
decades
before. Yeah.
prior. Yeah. No, I don't know. Maybe this is some other Stephen King reference that we're meant to connect.
Could be. Also, they popped down to Juarez, Mexico, Matt, to drink some of the steam off of all the murdering that happens in Juarez.
Yeah.
Hey, these people suck, man.
Yeah.
They suck. I
Yeah.
hate
Well,
them.
anything for more life, though, Scott. I mean, don't you agree? Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you?
I we don't know. We don't know what we would do in every situation, but I would like to think that I would not do this.
Yeah. I mean, I was joking, but it is just for a second. It's like if somebody really did offer you actual immortality and like had evidence for it, and they were like, yeah, you just gotta not that often, just every once in a while. You got to do some heinous, soul destroying
Yeah.
Voldemort shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think the truth is that I would probably actually just be like, no, like if I was the kind of person who did that stuff, then I wouldn't really be me anymore anyway. Like and
Yeah.
I would just be like tortured by the fact that I had done that, and
Yeah.
thus my eternity would actually just be an eternity of torture, which sounds worse than just dying. So
Yeah. I agree. Totally. So Jimmy Numbers, one of our other True Knot members, who's obviously like really good with numbers, so that's why they call him Jimmy Numbers.
makes sense.
Do you- I mean, I know Rose's hat is a very important part of who she is, but I also like the idea of like, what does Rose contribute to the group? Hat.
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 Hat. It's a good observation, Scott Book.
Jimmy Numbers tells Rose that based on what she saw in her quick view through Abra's head, that he's got things isolated down to a handful of possible locations, because she saw a convenience store that is local to New England, and then using that and the mountain views that she quickly saw, they basically very quickly get down to two possible locations, one of which is Anniston, New Hampshire, which is indeed where Abra lives. Well, that was very quick and is very alarming.
Yes. Yes. If only this had been at the start of the chapter. Okay, I'll stop. Yeah, no, I agree. Like it's pretty. I think maybe the previous chapter we had this sense of like, they might find her, and now it's like, oh no, they have found her. They just have to literally go to where she is.
Yeah.
And then you realize like, oh, the ticking clock has accelerated tremendously.
Yeah. I mean, the one good thing is they have the town, but certainly I think I appreciate that they pointed out in this section here that like you can't just like walk around saying, hey, does anyone know a young woman who strange things happen to every once in a while? Like, so yes, it is kind of alarming how quickly they have just gotten the town that Abra lives in. It doesn't mean that they're going to just be able to like walk up to her front door. They don't know, but I mean, I don't know. You could do a lot of Google Street viewing to get probably pretty close to which house it is, actually, if you wanted to.
I mean, I would be worried that once they get really close, then they'll start pinging off of even really minor psychic things that she's doing, and just be able to kind of divine in on her.
Yeah, definitely true. But our section ends with Rose saying she's going to go back into Abra's head to look for some more information to maybe hopefully get that location. And this is, I think, where we remember that the alarms that Dan asked Abra to set in her head, right? This burglar alarm, and I think actually the end of the chapter reinforces this with Dan's email to Abra being like, "Hey, by the way, make sure you do that thing because I now understand who these people are." And I think this is like, if you break down like structurally like why he divided this section, this is it right here. That he want like, we know she's going to go back in Abra's mind, and we're like, oh, I hope she listened to Dan when he talked about that stuff. But yeah, I still think we don't have to beat this drum anymore. But I still think this could have worked just fine without slicing the Dan and Dick Hallorann stuff in half.
I agree.
But speaking of which, Dick is here, and he tells Danny. I love, like, it is a really interesting scene because on the one hand it's this like incredibly like warm, comforting beat of like, look, it's Dick, and the first thing he says to Danny is, "You grew up fine." But also we're specifically told that the voice that's coming out of this woman is like raspy, and well, we know that she has like a very specific raspy like smoker's voice, and like it's uncomfortable and otherworldly that he's not speaking with emotion and inflection like a person, because he's not a person anymore. He's something else. And so it takes the scene that I think is could be very warm and makes it very, very unsettling, I think, which is really interesting. And not to preface our conversation about Flanagan too much, but is incredibly different from how Flanagan interprets the scene in his movie.
Yeah. I like, you said like mystical earlier, and I thought I latched onto that as being the perfect word to describe this, where it's definitely disconcerting and otherworldly, not in a warm way. This isn't a warm meeting between old friends.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like it. Like I like it a lot.
I do too. Yeah.
It's very compelling and creative, and I thought it was a really fun scene.
I like it a lot, and I also completely understand why when writing his version of the scene, Flanagan said, "There's an opportunity here to do something very emotional and warm."
Yeah,
and I'm gonna lean into that part of it.
Yeah. I also wonder if maybe this comes off better on the page. Like if you just shot this as it is written here, if it might come off a little corny or
yeah, I could see that.
Like it's one thing to imagine this, it's another to see it, and I think that happens a lot. So
sure, yeah. So yeah, what we hear here is that it hurts Dick to be here. It like his existence is now basically out of time and space, and so being here on the physical plane is actually painful to him. He doesn't like it, and so he has a limited amount of time here. He of course makes a comparison between Dan and Abra, saying they're very similar, which is, we kind of already knew that as well. But it's good to have it confirmed for us. And then he starts describing what the True Knot are. And he says they are empty devils, and then they are sick and don't know it. And that's where our part 2 Empty Devils title comes from. And we get to learn a little bit more about the knot, Matt, and I think it's around longer than maybe we estimated, right? So we see here the empty devils are on the land like a cancer on the skin. Once they rode camels in the desert. Once they drove caravans across Eastern Europe. They eat screams and drink pain. You had your horrors in the Overlook, Danny, but at least you were spared these folks. Now that the strange woman has her mind fixed on the girl, they won't stop until they have her. So that's orders of magnitude older, right? If we're talking like ancient Egypt, maybe, that's thousands and thousands of years ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's wonderfully vague, right? So it could be ancient Egypt, could be Crusades, could so
sure.
I think I was imagining them as being like 2 or 3 centuries old, like maybe Grandpa Flick is 300 years old or something like that. But there's stuff in these chapters that make it seem more like he's, like you said, like thousands, possibly. And it's vague. I mean, I think even if you were to ask Stephen King, I think he'd just be like, I don't know, like really, really old.
Yeah, I mean, the way I always saw them even before this line in the book was just like they kind of resemble the Romani, right? They
Mhm.
are like traveling migratory peoples.
Mhm.
And that when we see here, like that is what the caravans across Eastern Europe thing signifies. But like that was what I thought was like their origin, and we're kind
Mhm.
of saying no, it's further back than that. It's something.
Yeah.
Who knows how far it could be? It could be like as far back as you go, right? And
Yeah.
these are people that are connected to our greater the primeval, the prim, right?
Yeah.
This great
Well,
don't know. Don't know.
yeah. Well, when
Like how did the first true not vampire come to be, right?
yeah.
Like how did that happen?
Well, so I was kind of gonna go there. Like maybe as long as there have been people with shine with the magic, there have been those who realized that they could extend their life by murdering those people and drinking their magic,
Yeah.
and that there have always been people who did that, and maybe they weren't necessarily the quote unquote true not, but seems like a thing that could very comfortably exist in the setting that the king has created. And why not
Sure.
just say that those are the true knot, that the true knot has been around for as long as there has been the shining.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So Dick tells Danny to get what the girl asked for, the glove, the mitt, and to bring in his friends, the ones who know what Danny is. So that's I think we're talking Billy and Dr. John again, his old buddies. And then he wraps this whole thing up by saying in like you can almost hear it. You can almost hear it where he just says, "You still owe a debt. Pay it." Um, and like he doesn't actually go into like what this is, but I think we're meant to assume that we're talking about his low point, his choice
Yeah.
to abandon that little boy to his fate.
And
And
the money in the wallet. I mean, not literally
yeah,
owing her but like that being a moment where he literally took something out of the woman's purse and
yeah,
owing it back.
and
Um,
every good thing that's happened to him since, and every moment of grace that has
mhm.
been bestowed upon him by the people that were put in his path.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Really.
Even Dick, even back to Dick and the choice Dick made to travel, to risk his life and ultimately injure himself to like I don't think Dick ever fully recovered from his injuries either.
Yeah. There's an interesting sort of moral metaphysics to this idea that, like, yeah, you can receive grace, um, but that incurs on you a debt that you now owe the universe, and it may exact a heavy price actually, but um,
Yeah.
that's I don't dislike it. I think it's an interesting way of viewing our sort of entangledness with the world. There's no such
Yeah.
thing as a free lunch, even if you get divine grace. It's like, well, yeah, but you know, quid pro
Well, I
quo.
mean, I love the idea that grace like is not something you have to earn, but it is something you ultimately have to pay for.
Mhm.
Is just like a really fun concept of like you don't have to do anything in particular. And indeed it is often the because you have not earned it that makes grace such a powerful idea.
Yeah,
But that you still have to you still have to pay it.
yeah.
That it still incurs some sort of debt, I think is a really interesting wrinkle on
It
this whole thing.
reminds me of that moment near the end of The Stand where we really emphasize the difference between like when and why the good forces intercede versus when and why the dark forces intercede.
Yeah.
And the dark forces, it's generally basically seducing you with the promise of something. Like you give us this and we'll give you immortality, for example.
Mhm.
And the good forces, it's much more like, well, we will give you grace for no reason, and then we're going to see what you do with it. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Man, you're on fire with the connections today. You're fucking killing it.
I don't know why. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? It's not like I've been thinking about these books more than usual,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, like you said, we are bringing in Dr. John and Billy Freeman, and putting together our vampire hunting quartet. Every vampire hunting quartet needs a doctor. We know that,
That's true.
and a mini train conductor.
Does it typically go well for the doctors?
No, it does not.
No.
No.
I did, we didn't talk about this specifically, just to loop back around to it. Like, you just kind of offhandedly reference Salem's Lot. And I think when Abra looks up in her window and sees Rose the Hat, even though she's not really there, floating, and says, like, this can't be possible because I'm on the second floor. If we're making connections to other King books, like, that's the theme of today. I got a lot of Salem's Lot vibe out of that, of
Totally.
the kid just impossibly floating in the second story window.
Yep. I agree.
So Dan emails Abra asking for permission to bring in Dr. John, which she thinks about for a while and then grants, with the caveat that she definitely does not want her parents being told. And so we leave the chapter, I guess, sort of knowing the outline of what's going to happen next. Like, Dan takes off time from his work at the hospice. So I guess, like, can we just say, like, he's going to go get the baseball glove? That's like what he's going to do.
Right.
He's going to travel down there, get the baseball glove. So they can find out where the True Knot is.
I think that's a safe assumption.
Yeah. And that is where we leave the chapter this week, Matt. So what's gonna? I can't even ask you what's gonna happen next because you've seen the movie, so you could just, like, say, "Oh, well, this is gonna happen," and just be talking about the film. So,
yeah. Well, I think, like you said, we're gonna get the baseball glove because that's pretty clear.
Yeah. I can't remember if that part happened in the film. We don't have to talk about it right now.
Yeah. No comment.
All right. Well, that was the reading for this week. We will be back in a week's time to cover our next section, which will be chapters 10 through 12 of the novel. I believe that will wrap up section 2. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's true. So we're making our way through it, Matt. We're about at the halfway mark already.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. All right. Before we go for the week, though, we do have, for the first time in a few episodes, a discussion question to talk about. So this was the question we asked on the very first episode covering Dr. Sleep a couple weeks ago. And it was aptly, and perhaps a little sillily, what's your favorite magician? In honor of that incredibly skilled magician that managed to occupy 25 minutes of a group of 3-year-olds' time. What's your favorite magician?
Yeah. So we have from Michael Turn the Key. I've got to give this one to Penn and Teller, not for the one talks while the other gawks gimmick, but rather the whole meta magical deconstruction that they do. Every magician is a master of misdirection. They do this whole look over there at this, while I do this other thing over here while you're not watching. But these guys make a show of explaining that very fact while claiming to explain exactly how the trick is done, breaking the magician's code and letting us in on the secret. And then at the climax of the reveal, they somehow pull off the trick right in front of us in a way that their explanation in no way explains. Those sneaky bastards misdirected us on their misdirection. Genius. Honorable mention to David Blaine for his close-up street magic. Anyone who can stand 3 feet in front of you and convince you that he's levitating while simultaneously stealing your watch and swapping his drawers for yours is magic to me. Yeah, those are, man, those break my brain because you can just watch like videos of them, and you would think that would enable you to be like, oh, I'll just rewatch this a few times until I see what he did. Nope, not how it works.
Yeah. I love Penn and Teller. They're really great. I can't take David Blaine seriously after the YouTube comedy sketch David Blaine Street Magic. Do you remember those?
Vaguely.
It's just like David Blaine like showing up in front of people and like doing magic stuff, and they get increasingly agitated by it.
Oh, yes, I do remember that.
It's not real David Blaine. It's a comedy sketch, but this is old. This is old okay. YouTube for you young kids out there. Cheez-Its.
I don't think I saw that actually.
Cheez-Its.
Okay.
Oh well.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
So I'm really sad now. Yeah. But yeah, I love Penn and Teller, and I like that stuff is really cool. Yeah, I love the idea that like tricks that you know exactly how it works and yet it fools you anyway.
Yeah.
My Instagram Reels feed will feed a lot of these to me because I always watch them and I'm like, ooh, how'd they do that? How did they do that? Scarlet Claret says, because Quentin and Jareth have already been mentioned, I'm going to go with Jack Parsons, father of modern rocketry and practitioner of thelema. How do you pronounce that word?
I don't know.
Directly under Aleister Crowley. He was a genius with rocketry, but the rest of his life was a mess, from him losing his wife, boat, and life savings to follow Thelemite L. Ron Hubbard to exploding himself to death. Oh, this is a real person.
Yeah.
Is Thelema like the prototype for Scientology?
It sounds like it. I think it's probably. I mean, I know I've heard about it before. I just don't know how to pronounce the word. I think it's like the sort of fake occult religion created by, that guy that he mentioned in the answer.
L. Ron Hubbard.
He or she. Yeah.
Interesting. How interesting. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce this at all.
By Crowley, I think.
By Crowley. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. I understand now.
Yes. All right. Cool. Fun answer. That's a curveball. Love it.
Yeah.
Pear Jane says, Karina beat me to Quentin Coldwater. Read The Magicians, folks. Do it. So I'm going with Jareth, the Goblin King. Does anybody call him a magician? No, but he has a whole song called Dance, Magic, Dance, which means he and his codpiece qualify. He's androgynous, moody, petulant, sexy, dangerous, all the things you want in a fictional magician. And honestly, those words could also apply to Quentin Coldwater. And all his BFFs are Muppets. Put that magic spell on me, David Bowie. Totally.
It's been a while since I've watched Labyrinth.
Yeah, me too. I should watch. I think. Yeah, I think you should show your kids.
I don't think so. That's a terrible idea. What's wrong with you?
It's a good age for them to watch that.
Party Knowledge 1873 says, as for magicians in real life, since you seem to prefer that in this instance, I don't know if you could do whatever you want. Real life or fictional, it's fine. I'm a big fan of magic, and no one was bigger than Harry Houdini. The fact that he died while doing what he loved only adds to his mystique. In fictional life, which is true real life for most of us, my favorite magician is Thom Merrilin from The Wheel of Time. Tom? Is it Tom? There's an H there, Matt. Why isn't...
It's Tom for the same reason that the name Thomas has an H in it.
Yeah. What is dumb language we have?
I don't know.
From The Wheel of Time. Surprised, right? He is a gleeman, a traveling magician who does all kinds of classic magician tropes, outside of actually using magic, as he doesn't have that ability. He enters cities and towns, paying for his room and board by performing. He sings, he juggles, he tells stories, and he plays music. He is also excellent with throwing knives, is very quick-witted, and is the anchor that is needed for the protagonist in the beginning of the story as they learn to live outside their village for the first time. Well, I know you love this answer, Matt.
Yeah, he's a great character. It's a fun kind of trope there, because he's a stage magician in a world where there are wizards with incredible powers who can do actual magic, right? So it's just I don't know what to call it. Jordan is having a lot of fun with the idea of like, well, there will still be entertainers in a world that has magic powers, sure, even if those entertainers don't have magic powers. So they'll have their own repertoire that is, non-overlapping with what the magic people can do. But yeah, he has his own tricks, obviously, and also he probably assassinated one of the kings of the world, but that's never actually clarified.
Hey Matt, remember when you single-handedly caused the cancellation of the Wheel of Time show by not talking about it enough?
I do. I tried. I talked about it everywhere at every opportunity.
Do you regret that?
I do. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm so sorry. All right. Last answer. Pedro Dinero 77 says, I'm going to lean way into Matt's theory of recency bias and mention the magician, Balthazar from Joe Abercrombie's latest novel, The Devils. You guys got me hooked on Abercrombie when The Blade itself was on book club. I've since read everything he's written, and The Devils was a true-to-form book with incredibly fun characters, a lot of humor, and some of the most raucous violence I've ever seen put to page. I don't want to spoil his character or the story, but he's so self-serious that even when he does the most incredible feats of magic you could imagine, you love to hate how douchey he is about it. Also, the way the book reader hisses magician each time he doesn't get explicitly called that is hilarious. That sounds fun. Yeah, we loved. We read the first one of those for book club, right?
We did. We read The Blade itself for book club.
And I read the rest of the trilogy on my own because I just really fell in love with them. But no further than that. So thanks for reminding me of Abercrombie.
I loved that first book, like really loved it,
Yeah.
and I wanted to read the other ones in that trilogy, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I think we tried to get like the sequel on book club once, and it just got like eviscerated in the poll, and I guess I was like, oh, I guess no one cares about this book series. Fine. And so I just haven't read it. I need to. Like I really did love that book.
Yeah, we could circle back around.
Bunch. Yeah.
All right. I'll quickly go through the rest. Maybe Can You Dig Your Sam? Mentioned Gob from Arrested Development with his final countdown theme and Alliance of Magicians.
Now it's my turn. Now it's my turn to tell you pronounced something wrong. It's Job.
Job. It's spelled okay.
I understand, but his name is Job.
Job from Arrested Development. Sorry, everyone. Yeah. My nerd cred is tanking. I know.
I can't believe you haven't watched Arrested Development. Actually,
isn't it cringe humor? My Achilles heel.
I guess so.
Okay. Well, there you go. OK Road 2424 says the two rival magicians from Christopher Nolan's The Prestige and their escalating competition. Fantastic. Yes, one of my favorite movies. Not one of Scott's. Corinna 2020 says
just taking blows.
Say that. Give you no chance to defend yourself there. Corinna 2020 says Quentin Coldwater for the Magician's trilogy is a flawed character seeking magical solutions. Yes, it's almost like a reconstruction of the idea of like a magician in a story.
Fucking great fucking books. I love those books so much.
Duran Longbeard says David Blaine for combining card tricks with genuine endurance feats and limit testing. Busy Dad 82 says the amazing Jonathan for his bumbling comedian persona hiding greater illusions. I don't know who that is. Ruth Jess says Randy Marsh from South Park's Cock Magic episode at children's parties. Okay, yeah.
Of course, we all understand that reference.
So demonetized. Falcon 41098 says Radagast from Lord of the Rings for his nature-focused magic and eccentric forest lifestyle. House of Seven Paws, Schmendrick from The Last Unicorn, who excels at unspecified magic spells. DJ Nedelko says Penn and Teller for their 50-year partnership and Fool Us show format. And finally, Bent Westward, Merlin from 1981's Excalibur for wisdom, power, mystery, and moral symbolism. Great answers, everyone. Thank you so much.
Where else but Flanagan's Wake can you get Radagast and Cock Magic in the same list? Nowhere. Only here.
I think you're right.
All right, Matt. That was our discussion question from a couple weeks ago. What is the question we are asking our audience now?
For this next week, we have what's your favorite filmed depiction of trippy mental powers?
Yeah, I think we really we didn't talk about much on the episode, but I think both of us really glommed onto the image of the world turning when Abra kind of inadvertently goes into the world of Rose the Hat, and that's an image that, as we'll see when we get to the movie, is recreated pretty accurately in the film. So what are other instances of how you visualize this kind of mental power?
Yeah, there's a lot of variety of answers here. Potential answers, I mean.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is it. We did it. As we said, next week we'll be back with chapters 10, 11, and 12 of Dr. Sleep.
That's right. Remember, you can reach us via email at flanaganswakepod@gmail.com, over on Twitter at flanaganswake19. All sorts of other places. The subreddit is probably the best place to hang out, reddit.com/r/doofmedia. And you can also find us on YouTube, unless Netflix has decided that we can't have an episode for some reason, which happens occasionally.
Yeah, our poor, wonderful episode covering the final episode of Mike Flanagan's A Haunting of Hill House got flagged for copyright, and we appealed and lost. So we're working on re-uploading that episode without any of the clips in it, but probably by the time y'all are hearing this, that will be done. But it makes me very sad. It makes me very sad.
Yeah, it's pretty annoying.
Yep. If you want to support us in ways that won't get copyright flagged and taken down, well, maybe you can go to doofmedia.myshopify.com and find all of our amazing merchandise there. We have a lot of great stuff from Hill House, including this Cup of Stars mug that I am holding right now. Wonderful mug, my favorite of all of our mugs. It also says the rest is confetti here. Just great stuff. And you should buy it.
Definitely.
Yeah. So doofmedia.myshopify.com to find this mug, many other mugs, magnets, stickers, the shirts, the whole thing.
Hats, phone
we really
cases.
we really just do this because it's fun. It's fun, and we want you guys to enjoy it. We're silly with it, but then occasionally we get great designs like this Cup of Stars mug that I just adore.
Yeah, check it out because there's a lot of Flanagan adjacent, Hill House adjacent, Stephen King adjacent, obviously designs over there. So something to tickle your fancy.
And new things are being added all the time. I believe the newest thing right now is a hat that says Tuesday on it, which is a Shining joke.
I said I was going to get that. I haven't got that yet.
Yeah, buy it.
Yeah. All right. If you like any of our shows and you want to support us directly, then please consider donating on our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. There's all sorts of cool stuff over there on the Patreon, including a huge backlog of bonus podcast content. Just a truly extraordinary amount accumulated over the years, and ongoingly updated with to a From podcast.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep. And I believe by the time people are listening to this, the newest episode of Freeman Bros, the hit Emmy Award-winning podcast where Matt Freeman and his brother talk about random stuff.
Just whatever, yeah.
Yeah. Please put an asterisk on the Emmy Award-winning part and don't look it up. Of course, if you cannot afford to support us on Patreon, we totally understand. There's tons of ways to help us out. Please keep sharing the podcast wherever you can. And please keep those ratings and reviews coming. We see you folks. We see those numbers go up. We see the ratings go up. And we do appreciate you all taking the time to do that. I have no new reviews to read right now. But that's okay because I see the numbers go up and I know you're doing what we asked you to do. And I thank you very much for that. But if you want to actually leave a written review, we of course will read it during this section just to show you our thanks and appreciation. So keep them coming, please.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, folks, that is it. My voice is quickly going away. I don't know why that's happening, but I sound more like Eleanor Oulé every minute I talk. So we're going to wrap this one up. We'll be back next week with more Dr. Sleep. Until then, rest in peace, Mr. Flanagan. And I hope nobody creepily talks through your open door mouth.
Yeah, or from your conservatory.